How about sharing with Muslims? When you start with a conversation with a Muslim, don't attack Islam up front. Don't attack Muhammad. Don't attack the Quran. There's a fellow who has a ministry in Southern California. He's a scholar. He's written several books on Islam. And he spoke at my home church one time, and he says, this is how you witness to Muslims. You ask them a question. Why do you follow that pedophile prophet? Whoa. Do you see what happened? What kind of response would that generate from a Muslim? Instantly, there would be a barrier through which you would be unable to communicate with that person. You basically built a brick wall with that question at the outset. You don't attack Muhammad. You don't attack the Quran. Now, in your conversations with them, these subjects are going to come up. And you need to be prepared with some answers. Why don't you accept the Quran as the Word of God? Why don't you accept Muhammad as a prophet? Don't you know he's even prophesied in your own Bible? Jesus said Muhammad was going to come as a messenger. So these issues will come up, but you don't immediately launch on the offensive. You don't go on the attack. Because when you do so, you instantly build a barrier through which you will not be able to penetrate. And you basically, it's counterproductive. You want to share the gospel with that person. You don't want to build walls. So don't attack Islam. Understand that this is a spiritual battle. This is a deeply spiritual battle. I mentioned this at the outset. This is a spiritual issue that we're dealing with. So when you go into a talk with a Muslim, you need to put on your spiritual armor. Read through Ephesians 6. Read through putting on the spiritual armor. Put on your spiritual armor. Have people praying for you. Constantly. Understand it's a spiritual battle. Open with icebreaker questions. This is what I like to do. This is how I kind of get the ball rolling with a Muslim. Open with icebreaker questions. What are icebreaker questions? I'm going to give you a couple of examples as we wrap up here. My icebreaker questions have basically two criteria. An icebreaker question has to be non-confrontational and it has to be open-ended. Non-confrontational and open-ended. And this is how you kind of get the conversation started with a Muslim. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the examples one of my common icebreaker questions is this. I'll ask a Muslim, I'm a Christian, and I'm right up front with them. You know, I'm a Christian. I love talking to Muslims because I like hearing the spiritual journey that Muslims have come through. Would you please mind sharing with me how you became a Muslim? What is it about Islam that you find attractive? See, so this question meets my two criteria. It's non-confrontational and it's open-ended. Why are you a Muslim? Why are you a Muslim rather than a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist? What is it about Islam that you find attractive? What's it about Islam that you find attractive? What's this do? Number one, it allows that person to share a little bit about him or herself with you. They'll give you their background. They'll talk about their spiritual journey, how they became a Muslim, or maybe they've always been a Muslim. You know, they'll say, I've never known anything else. I've always been a Muslim. Maybe they were a convert from Catholicism or convert from some other Christian sect. Maybe they were an atheist before and they found Islam to be reasonable and logical. You'll hear that argument. You'll hear that response. But whatever the response is, you'll get to know a little bit of the background of that person, and based on what they tell you, you'll know how to ask the next question, where to kind of steer the conversation from there. What usually ends up happening also, and this is kind of the bonus of this particular method, is once they have shared a little bit about themselves with you, then the question will ricochet back to you. So, why are you a Christian? You see what's happened? Why are you a Christian? They've just asked you to tell them what you believe about Christianity. Why are you a Christian? And the door is wide open for you to share as much as you want. And because you have given that person the honor of listening to them, they will reciprocate that honor and listen to you for as long as you want to talk. And you have every right to talk. And I would encourage you to talk and talk and talk. Share the gospel with them. Icebreaker question. Here's another one. And this one I used in Kenya a couple of years ago. I use it every so often, but this is probably the best example of it. I went to Kenya a couple of years ago with some friends of ours who are long-term missionaries over there. And we were in a city in central Kenya, large city. And near the end of our time there, my friend asked me to go to the mosque and kind of introduce him to the local imam there. So I went to the mosque and I said, Mike says, let's go to the mosque and meet the imam. So we set up an appointment. The imam meets us in the courtyard, takes us into his office, and I do a little chit-chat. Finally, I get down to my icebreaker question. I said, Sheikh Jibril, let me ask you a question. I said, we Christians, you probably believe that we have a lot of misunderstandings about what Islam teaches. And I believe on the same hand that Muslims have a lot of misunderstandings or misconceptions about what Christianity means and teaches. So I said, would you mind sharing with me what you understand about Christianity so I can clear up any misconceptions you might have? Very simple question. Non-confrontational and open-ended. Share with me what you know about Christianity so I can clear up any misunderstandings. And this opened up a huge door. He said, I've been the imam of this mosque for 24 years. Now, he was from Pakistan. We're in Kenya. Kenya is still predominantly a Christian country, 70% Christian even today. He says, I've been an imam in this nation for 24 years in this mosque, and you are the very first Christians that have ever come and talked to me. Yeah. And I have to wonder today, if we were to ask a Muslim on the street the same question, would they have the same response? I've been a Muslim in this country for 20 years. I've never had a Christian come and talk to me. You were the very first Christian to come and talk to me. And then his next statement floored me even further. He says, I don't know anything about Christianity. Would you tell me what you believe? And my jaw dropped. Are you kidding? He just asked me to tell him what I believe. And for the next hour and a half, I got to share the gospel with that imam in his own mosque. How cool is that? You see, all because I asked a simple, non-confrontational, open-ended icebreaker question. And you guys can develop your own icebreaker questions. These are just a couple of examples that have worked for me. But it's easy. It's not difficult. Remember, Muslims are bound up by the enemy. They are in absolute bondage to the enemy. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, he says, even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. These are people whose minds the God of this age has blinded. Paul writes to Timothy, he says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 25 and 26, he says, gently instruct those who oppose the truth. Perhaps God will change those people's hearts and they will learn the truth. Then they will come to their senses and escape from the devil's trap, for they have been held captive by him to do whatever he wants. See, Muslims are being held captive by the enemy of this world, by the enemy of God. And they long to be set free. And we're the only ones that can bring them the message that will set them free.